Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the FanScription podcast. I am Walter Benasiak here with my cohort, Robert W. Walker.
It's actually R. But
damn,
whatever.
I just took a guess. I had a 1 in 26 chance. What can I say? We're here today.
You still lost.
I know, I still lost. Here today to talk about Spider-Man 3. Speaking of losing, the third Spider-Man movie of the Sam Raimi trilogy.
Speaking of losers!
This movie I've been wanting to make a fanscription of. This was one of the ones that, of like the handful that I really wanted to make behind the Rocky movies that I did a few months back. This is an infamous movie, but it seems to be gaining popularity for people now. I know Malcolm liked this movie, ironically, I think, but there's people who legitimately love Spider-Man 3 now, Rob.
All I can say about that is I won't judge, but there is medicine for that now. Consult your local physician.
Yeah, I think maybe that's a good idea. In any case, I wanted to tackle this one to see if there was a way to fix it up. And my title for this one was to just, drop Venom from the whole movie because it's overcrowded. I think that's the one thing that people sort of point out the most is that there's so much going on in there. It's hard to keep track of everything.
I mean,
so.
2 villains and 3 love interests.
3 villains.
3 villains and 2 love interests is too crowded of a movie?
I mean, sometimes.
Is that how it works for you?
Sometimes.
You just don't see the vision, man.
I know.
You weren't the Sony executive there in charge going, we need a third villain.
That's right. I know that they forced Venom in there. By the way, the title of this one was What If Venom Wasn't in Spider-Man 3?
Because 3 villains work so well for Batman and Robin.
Oh, right. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
But Sam Raimi does not like Venom, does not really connect with that character, and he said on multiple occasions that he just didn't care about that character. So Sony shoehorned that character into this movie, and you could see that maybe he was kind of trolling Sony a couple times. Maybe that's where the dancing thing all came from. Like, you're going to have Venom in this movie? Fine. We're going to have a whole dance number and a whole dance sequence with Tobey Maguire.
I'll never know for sure, but there is a part of me that thinks that Sam Raimi might have been like, just, you know what? I'm going to sink this ship and they're all going down with me.
Well,
screw you guys, I'm going home.
Right. That was a successful mission for Sam Raimi because they were planning Spider-Man 4. I remember seeing interviews with Tobey Maguire on the Conan show and stuff saying that they were about to shoot in a couple months for Spider-Man 4, and then they canceled it. There's a lot of details out there now. There's concept art about what was supposed to happen in there. I think Vulture was supposed to be the main villain. We got Vulture now, which Michael Keaton, which is an amazing performance in Spider-Man Homecoming. This was it for Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy. And did it end on a good note? Most people would say no, but a lot of people like
the correct people would say no.
Right, but the first 2 movies,
again,
a lot
I'm
of
not
people
judging.
No judgments here. The first 2 movies, a lot of people like. I'm a huge fan of the original Spider-Man movie from 2002. A lot of people love that second one. I'm not one of them who absolutely loves Spider-Man 2, but I understand kind of why people really love it.
Lies!
Oh, God. Scared me. So, let's just get into our thoughts on it. Rob, do you remember first seeing Spider-Man 3? This was right before
I remember.
Started, I think.
Because Doug liked it.
Doug liked Spider-Man 3?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I think we've talked about this before. Yeah, because he didn't like any of
And this is one of those, instances, Spider-Man 3 and X3 were the 2 that I was like, never forgive, never forget when it comes to Doug. Because I'm just like, you told me those 2 were better, and you dragged me kicking and screaming, and I regretted it the rest of my life.
Doug has told me he doesn't like any of those Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies. He said they're all dumb.
He's wrong, but it happens a lot with him. So.
Sure.
Again, not judging him or how wrong he is. He just is.
There's no judgments here.
I remember sitting there going, I think for me the biggest thing was Spider-Man getting infected with the alien and just going into whatever the hell that was, super geek mode. Like Tobey Maguire was already pretty dorky as Peter Parker, but now we've achieved uber dork. And I remember sitting there with him doing the whole disco dance, and I remember turning to Doug and just saying, I'm going to get you for this.
I remember reacting to that in the theater, too. I remember just being like, what?
The other one was him doing the upside down kiss thing with Gwen Stacy really rubbed me the wrong way, where I'm like, man, this just does not gel with anything these films have done so far. And, like, it seemed like a big FU to people who enjoyed the comics as well. I was like, I just am not seeing this.
Sure.
And then after that, it just kept going downhill. But I was, like, kind of into it for a while. And then the third and final straw was the second James Franco's like, I have amnesia. I love you all. I'm just like, the fuck is going on? I was just staring at the screen like, what? And it never recovered after that. But because I'm like, that's one of those things that, like, they tell you in screenwriting 101, like, amnesia subplots are for bad soap operas. Like, this is something you just avoid. And I'm just like, really? We're going with the amnesia? And it meant nothing, because he then just gets his memory back. I'm like, why did we just waste like 20 minutes of film with this then? Like,
that is 100% my probably biggest gripe with it. I mean, the Venom stuff pisses me off, obviously, but I mean, Harry had such a good trajectory going in from the first and second movie. We had that great tease at the end of Spider-Man 2.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, great, we're going to see like this conflict, because he doesn't
Where are we going with this?
Right.
It's going to be awesome.
Exactly, because he doesn't want to go after Peter. He's his best friend, but also he thinks he killed his dad and all this stuff. So it's this great, like, two of two minds, basically, almost literally, because he sees his dad in the mirror all the time. So it's like, you know, where are they going to go with this in the third movie? And then he's just automatically bad. He's the new Goblin with a great costume. And then he has amnesia, and then he comes back and turns good at the end. It's like, What? How did you mess that up? That was like the easiest route to go.
That's where I lose it, because like I think Malcolm, we've had this conversation, and Malcolm's point is like, you don't get it. It's Sam Raimi's trolling it. I respect it as a troll film. I'm like, I get that. I'm like, I'm okay if you want to go that route and just say you respect it, because I'm that way with Gremlins 2, which is also a troll movie.
Sure, yeah.
As is Joe Dante going like, ha, you idiots wrote me a blank check for this.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm just like, that doesn't necessarily translate into a great film. I'm like, Spider-Man 3 just, on a basic story level, doesn't work.
Yes.
And it's not only it doesn't work, it really doesn't work.
Right. No, I 100% agree with you there. I mean, the things that happen in that movie are just, it just kind of boggles my mind to still think about it. There's not a lot of movies that I go back and watch and I still get upset at. I'm not one of those guys. I'm not like Rob, who gets mad all the time. I let things go.
I'm not mad, like. Walter.
It seems like you're angry.
I'm just disappointed.
Appropriate, for sure.
No, so, this film I'm mad about.
Yeah, I mean, but that's the thing, is like, I'm a huge Spider-Man fan. I love Spider-Man. He was the first superhero that I got attached to, that 90s animated series, up through comics and all this. Like, I'm a huge Spider-Man fan. So I was invested.
So was I.
Right.
That's why I'm angry.
You're an 80s Spider-Man fan, yeah. So you came up through like the beginning of Venom, so you kind of saw Venom's creation. With
that's another thing that pissed me off, is like, I saw Venom's creation. Yeah. I remember the alien suit saga and everything, and that's to see it just mishandled like that.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
It hurts.
I know. That's my point. Is that I don't get too upset about films. I don't get like angry about them or stay angry about them. But Spider-Man 3, I've gotten more and more angry about the longer. I remember. And
that's something I do have to note. I don't think Malcolm might correct me on this. I don't think. Well, Malcolm's younger than me, but I don't think he came up with that Spider-Man, and Doug definitely didn't. He didn't know squat. So for him, like, I'm like, maybe because of that disconnect, there's like, they don't know what could have been.
Right.
But it was definitely a case where he's running around like an uber dork. I'm like, no, the alien suit isn't supposed to. It's supposed to make him nasty.
Right.
Like, he should be actually more intimidating. Yeah,
not dancing around.
Yeah, the scene, there's a great re-edit of that scene where they cut out a lot of the garbage dance scenes, and it really is just about Peter and Mary Jane, and when Peter, like, you know, freaking pushes her down, it plays so much better without the stupid. And I'm like, yes, that's what the alien suit was about. It makes him a darker, nastier, meaner, vindictive version of himself. Exactly. And that's what was completely missing in the movie. It was just more like, I'm a dork.
Right. In the cartoon, I have read some of the Black Suit Saga in the comics, like the original ones, but I haven't read like all those, and even the ones I did read, it's been a really long time. My main exposure to it was the 90s animated series, and I loved how it was like a slow progression for him.
Yes, like that's what the comic did too. Right. Like, I thought the cartoon actually handled it pretty well.
Yeah,
all things
because
considered.
he's convincing himself that what he's doing, like the more aggressive things that he's doing, are correct, and you can't really argue with him at first because it's like he's just taking more of a stand because Peter Parker's kind of a passive character sometimes.
Yeah.
So you see him taking a stand and standing up for himself. I'm like, all right, Peter, this is great. And then it gets further and further and further down, and then he just becomes a maniac.
And the other critical mistake, and this is the opposite problem that the Mark Webb films had with Andrew Garfield, is Tobey Maguire was a great high school Parker. I'm like, he nailed it. I'm just like, that's how I imagine. Like, go back and read go back and read the first issue. He is as in classic 60s dorky with the glasses and he wears a tie to school. Like, come on. Like, it's as nerdy as you can get. And if you don't like Tobey Maguire, fine. But I'm like, for that portrayal of Parker, I thought it really nailed it. Now, what that film series with the Raimi films had a problem with, they never really progressed him. They started to in 2. Where I thought, okay, he's getting out of his nerdy phase.
Right,
he's going to college now. He's more,
That's a good point.
But then they kind of regressed him.
Yeah. Whereas
when you read by the 80s, when that whole alien suit saga came into place, this was not uber dork Peter. Like, this was post-college age, responsible, has his shit together.
Right. For as much as Spider-Man can.
As much as Spider-Man can, and confident enough. Peter's problem is he never has the ultimate self-confidence because of his background, but he definitely was a much more confident Peter. That's the Peter Parker I grew up with.
Right.
The kind that you actually get in the Into the Spider-Verse with the good Parker.
That's exactly. I grew up with an older Peter too. Yeah, a college
and that one nailed it most of all. Maguire doesn't do that, so therefore you've got this character that goes halfway through and then completely regresses to a point that they didn't do in the 80s comic with the alien suit saga, and then the Garfield version was different. That one had, in my opinion, the perfect college-age Parker. I'm like, I could see this guy, post-college Parker, smarmy, and but the problem is they started him off in high school, and I'm like, no way. And he's like, I'm so popular, I'm so down. And I'm like, why, dude? You've got it made. You should just be running around owning that high school. But I wasn't buying that for a second. So they each have their different problems.
Absolutely. And now we have Tom Holland, back in high school. He's the youngest one.
He does it well.
He does. No, I really like Tom Holland.
I have a few issues with that one too, but they're not really on Tom Holland. I think his performance is perfect. I just think at this point I'm a little done with Spider-Boy, where I'm just like, okay, we've had
I agree.
multiple high school iterations, and they're done well, but I am getting a little burnout on that.
I want the older Peter Parker, and they could if they stick with Tom Holland, why not just stick with him until he's 30 or something? Let's do it.
Right.
He's good enough where people like him. The MCU is still popular as long as those movies are making money, which I think Spider-Man movies are always going to make some kind of money.
I hope they do age him. I hope they get him into college, get him into a story arc where we see him grow as a character, because that's something none of the live action, well, they didn't necessarily do it even with Into the Spider-Verse. We just got him already that.
We didn't see.
So there was no progression.
Right.
It was more like schlubby Parker becoming decent Parker again. But maybe that. But
right. I like I said. I've mentioned this before. I love Into the Spider-Verse. It might be my favorite Spider-Man movie. It's right there.
With it is for me. I feel like that one's the gold standard.
Yeah, it's great, and doesn't even have Peter as the main character. That's what's so great about it, is we have something way different. And it's
still the best Parker. That's what kills me.
I know.
He's a secondary character.
I know.
It's still the best
Peter B. Parker is the best Peter Parker on screen, I think. I have to agree with that. And not to say that there's all positives
Both
to all
Parkers were really
in
that movie.
Yeah, even Chris Pine's version of the blonde Parker.
Yeah, because that's the confident one that we got, in the so they both nailed it.
Right, and there's no version of Peter on the screen that I've absolutely hated. I think Tobey Maguire has his good sides. I do like him.
Oh yeah.
Andrew Garfield I really liked because he felt more realistic, like a real person.
They each comprise one half of a Peter Parker.
Sure, I've heard.
And
that
I just wish, I wish either of those film series would have comprised the whole. But they each have, Maguire is nerdy Parker and Garfield is more confident Parker, and it's each one half. It's just they all start at the same point.
Right, and we established that we like the younger Tom Holland version as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
The point of all this is that changing Spider-Man 3 and going back in there and retooling things with what I had, I didn't want to like completely redo everything. We try to stay away from that as much as possible on FanScription. We try to work with the movie that we have. Maybe that's not always going to happen. Maybe we're going to, have an exception for that.
We could do Ultimate Fantasy Round.
Right, yeah. Something like that maybe we'll do eventually. But for this one...
But I think it's more fun to try to think,
exactly,
what would a studio allow?
Right. Well, I didn't do that with this one.
No, that's for sure.
I went way over the top.
But I could see a film like this being made. I don't think Sony would greenlight it.
No, I don't think that
it's not like it was
happen.
A $12 billion budget. Like,
right.
We're trying to still think within the realms of reality.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely went kind of all out with this one to just make this a tragedy, basically. So my big one here, my big change, is that I killed Mary Jane and Harry. So that love triangle. I know. I don't know how people are going to react to this because we're filming this beforehand. I'm assuming a lot of people are going to hate this one because I take such a far leap with the story. But I think it makes sense. I mean, if you think about Harry's downfall, if they did it the right way, like that downhill slope that he was on would have ended with him dying in any case, but not like he was in Spider-Man 3 where he turns good again or whatever. But this one, he takes Mary Jane down with him, and we do sort of the flip on things with her getting the Gwen Stacy death, or a Gwen Stacy-like death. I think would be a big shocker for people. And in the post-Game of Thrones world, folks, I think this would do great. Maybe. What do you think, Rob? No, I don't know if I think there's a lot of people that would have backlash against it, but I was trying to go from what makes sense story-wise. So that's just I would have to think about this one for a while if I saw this in theaters, but eventually I think I would come around to understanding why and liking it. And this was a lot of a setup for a new trilogy with new characters surrounding Peter. That was my point. Like, let's end this one. I don't really like Kirsten Dunst Mary Jane. Let's kill her. There's a reason to do it with Harry. Harry's already on that downward slope, like I said. So let's redo this with a new trilogy, introduce Gwen Stacy at the end, and have new characters surround Peter going into a next trilogy. That was what I was trying to do.
Okay, if I'm being completely honest...
I don't want you to be honest, bro.
Fantastic. Great job. Let's wrap it up.
All right. We'll talk to you guys later. Thanks for...
All right.
Go ahead.
No, I feel like if I were watching that, I'd be very torn.
That's the point.
Because I will say this. I do like surprises. And that definitely would have been a freaking surprise.
Yes, yeah.
Initially I probably would have hated it. I might have come around to it when I had to consider everything that the films had done leading up to it. And I think, we discussed this before. I think what you did was the very best you could with being dealt a really shitty hand. And there's two ways in poker, you get dealt a really bad hand. One, you can fold right away, which I think is what they did. I just think they're just screw it. I think Raimi was screw it. I think Sony wasn't, but, they had their own thing. But I think everybody involved could almost see the writing on the wall and whatever. Threw their cards away, folded. Or you can bluff your way and fight to the very end. I feel like that's what you did. It's just all right, I got dealt these crappy hands for movie 1 and 2. How do I solve this? And it makes sense. There's just a lot of problems, and it all comes down to those first two movies, which is I'd have to be sitting there and I'm like, man, you did that same plot point twice with let's just grab Mary Jane and dangle her over an edge.
I didn't want
literally
to do it,
twice in the first two movies.
I know. That was a big
and
thing.
And then the biggest problem with the first, I had a huge problem with this in the first movie was doing what was essentially the Gwen Stacy scene. In the first movie, I thought was a catastrophic mistake. I remember the second he's holding her over the bridge and then with the kids down and it's suffer the little children! And I was just rolling my eyes going well, they're not going to kill Mary Jane in the first movie. This is lame. And then they didn't. And so I was well, kind of what was the point of that? Why would you take what was one of the most infamous scenes in comic book history and just throw it in this movie with no payoff? So then the second movie came around and I'm just okay, so it's even less of a big... It's just a non-scene. It's just aha, I'm going to dangle you over the edge here and Spider-Man's going to come to save the day. It's so tropey. And I'm what is the point? Again, there's just no real payoff. It's just a movie cliche. So if you do that then a third time, I'm going to be like, oh man, now we're doing this.
I know.
And then you kill her off. So then a part of me is like, well, is that a surprise? Or is this just kind of like almost comical? Like, well, I guess third time's the charm.
The charm, right.
Can only beat the odds so many times.
Right. The point that I tried to hammer home with this is that she was kidnapped those first 2 times, and she is kidnapped in this one, but she willingly goes to try and save Harry, basically, trying to get through to him. She puts herself in harm's way on purpose.
It's not that... You did the best thing that you could. It's the first 2 films completely screws it up for you, though, because it's just like, man, they did that again and again, and now it's just like a third time you're just like, Jesus, like, this, what is up with this poor girl's life?
Right.
I think I will say this, what saved it, I thought, because such a downer, is that if you're a comic book fan and you see Gwen Stacy there is a certain cleverness in like, oh, so we've role reversed this. So now it's Stacy becomes the new Mary Jane, basically, and while Mary Jane got Gwen Stacy'd. And I think putting that in there, and if you give like them a real romance that doesn't end in some horrific tragedy, I think you could pull it off.
Right.
That's also a tall order, because then you're looking at a whole second trilogy.
But that's what I'm saying. I mean, like, you end this, part of it, so you have 3 more movies where the heart of the movie is going to be Gwen and Stacy and Peter Parker's romance, sort of, but it's got to be like a very slow burn. Like that first movie, they should not be together at all. It should be these little hints, they're friends maybe, and Peter's like a completely broken man in that first movie. It's all about rebuilding up, and when he gets, I would want Venom to be the main villain in the second trilogy, so when Venom comes and he has the black suit and everything, he has something that he's really feeding off of, this raw pain, and also trying to rebuild himself at the same time, so he tricks himself into thinking that he's finally coming back into himself, but he's going way too far. He starts pushing people around like he really does in the comics and in the cartoons and everything.
That's great. Now the trick is you just killed off Mary Jane, and now you're going into a 4th movie with hopes for a full 3 films.
I mean, it's
do you think the audience is going to stick with
Spider-Man 3 is the highest grossing worldwide Spider-Man movie, regardless of what people feel about it. I think people would have liked to see what happened next. I wanted to see if they could redeem themselves with the 4th movie. I think a lot of people were thinking that.
You might be right. It's a huge gamble.
Right, it is.
I'm thinking like chart guy here. It's like, the chart says that's really risky.
Right, but at the same time, we know that Venom is a moneymaker. Even if it's a movie that not a lot of people like, the Tom Hardy movie, like that people are split on, but that made almost $1 billion at the worldwide box office. I mean, if Venom is in the advertisements, people will go to see it. So in my 3rd Spider-Man movie, Venom's not in it. We promote Venom in the second trilogy, and that will bring people in, I think.
So would Venom be like in the 3rd movie in that trilogy then?
At the end of the second movie, he'll like the character or the Eddie Brock version will come up. But the second movie would be all the black
in theory it
suits
could
and
work.
stuff.
It's just it depends how people react to that 3rd film, because you could also get the problem of just like, you freaking killed Mary Jane. I'm coming back.
Yes, she's dead. Gwen Stacy's back now. This is Gwen Stacy's time. Mary Jane's
I always
character,
liked Gwen Stacy.
I did too. I like Mary Jane and Gwen Stacy.
Yeah,
but
I like them both. Mary Jane's in the Raimi films is just they had no clue what to do with her.
Right.
And it was very evident with the climax to each film.
That's what I'm saying, is that we have an opportunity to create a new character with new motivations and a new personality. But
it's different than the comics!
Oh, but that's what's good! In this situation, that's what's good, because they've already changed so many things. If you just adjust a couple things here or there and make Gwen Stacy the main focus, like she's Peter's true love, which a lot of people argue that she is anyway. I mean, like, you could really push that and make it something special, especially with the slow burn of their relationship going through those 3 movies.
# not my Mary Jane. I'm just giving you what I think.
No, I know a lot of people aren't gonna like it. I totally understand why. I like Mary Jane a lot.
Well, they may react well to your idea, but I'm just saying, like, there's always going to be that group that's like so.
I get it.
It really just depends. I think it could either really work, or I think there could also be like a giant backlash against it.
Yeah, no, I understand that.
It is, but I don't think. I think you did the best with what you were given.
Sure.
I think the problem is it's a Kobayashi Maru. It's a no-win situation, because with the way they handled Mary Jane 2 movies in, My one issue with it is I'm like, wow, this isn't Gwen Stacy like girl in the fridge. This is just ultimate girl in the fridge. 1, 2, 3, slam the fridge door. Like every single movie, like this is the only plot point in the climax, and then finally it's like, well, you finally did it. I guess you finally killed her off.
Right.
Like, and that's not your fault. That's the fault of like the first 2 films. But it boxes you into that unfortunate situation. So it's like that's the interesting thing about the third Spider-Man movie. I don't know. I'm really not sure how you would have done it and made it great. I feel like that series just had already... It was a bunch of small mistakes that started building up. Even as good as, like, I love Spider-Man 2 to death. But that climax always rubbed me the wrong way because I'm like, man, is a city in danger not enough? Like, what are the stakes going to be for Spider-Man ever if this is the one thing you keep doing? And then they did it again in the third film.
Right.
So...
Well, that's another point that I tried to make clear. Maybe it wasn't as clear in the actual video, but Peter chose revenge going after, like, Sandman, Flint Marko, instead of trying to save Harry. So, like, and more people died because
I like
he made that choice.
I like that aspect about how, like, maybe he didn't really fully learn Uncle Ben's lesson.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So this is a new...
And that's a great amount of angst that you could go into a new trilogy. Again, I there's a lot of things I think work about it. I think a lot of the things that don't are the fault of the first 2 movies.
Right. I mean, yeah, like I said earlier, I mean, I tried to give Mary Jane a reason to be in that situation. I thought her trying to save Harry, and I tried to make that a point in the video that she's trying to help him. So at least that's more of a motivation instead of just getting snatched in the middle of a restaurant or
and you
from her bed or whatever happened in the first movie.
You have their romance built up in such a way that I feel like it would be seriously tragic.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. And he proposed to her. She said yes. Yeah. They were going to get married.
That's the only thing that, like, what little goodwill those Mark Webb films built up was from the chemistry, I think, between
so great. Yeah,
Parker and Stacy.
Yes, absolutely.
And the problem with the movie is not that they
Andrew Garfield.
Yeah, Emma Stone and Andrew Garfield.
They were amazing, man.
I weep for that movie because I'm like, man, had you done this in part 3 and had you built this up properly and not just tried to shove it into 2 with, again, 2 villains and all this, I'm like,
Green Goblin in
this
Amazing
could have
Spider-Man
been
2 was
heartbreaking.
Terrible.
Yeah.
It was still...
nothing made sense in that movie.
Right, I know.
I need Spider-Man's blood.
No idea what was
going
on.
Can't give you the blood. I hate Spider-Man. What?
I like Dane DeHaan, too. He's given a bad script to deal with, I think. But I still felt
Dane DeHaan always, when he's in a bad movie, he seems one step removed from Link from the old Legend of Zelda cartoons. Well, excuse me, Prince. He's just like such a lunkhead.
I guess he's great in Chronicle.
He's been great in things. It's like you put him like, what was the Fifth Element knockoff?
The City of 1,000. Was it Planets or what is it? Something of 1,000 Planets or. I can't remember.
Why am I blanking on the name? Doug and I love that movie, but because it was so terrible, and he was just amazing. He's like, I'm totally like the galaxy's greatest like super agent, yo. It's just like, what?
Yeah. Oh, Valerian.
Valerian, yes, that movie. Or even in Spider-Man 2, it's like, well, why would your father find? That's the secret question, isn't it, Peter? Like, it's just so ridiculous. Like, I don't know what his performance is, but it's. I will say this: it's great to watch, but it's definitely. I'm like, this isn't good, but it's entertaining
for sure. Yeah, man. In that movie with Gwen and Peter, I was still invested in their relationship because even in Spider-Man, the first time I saw them in Spider-Man 2,
sad at the end because of their relationship.
That's what I'm saying. Though it was
completely done wrong, and I was super pissed. I'm like, no, I still feel sad but I feel even more sad because this could have been sadder.
Right.
But yeah, like so if you did that with Mary Jane, I think it would be freaking heartbreaking. Whether or not I would have liked that, though, is just...
I think it's a case of maybe, like, getting what we need instead of what we really want. I think you needed to reset what was happening there. Like you were saying, everything was just repeating itself. If they were going to go forward with any more movies, we needed a hard reset here. And without rebooting the whole franchise, this was a way to do it. Bringing in new characters, new storylines, new villains, and new motivations for Peter. That's what I tried to do.
I honestly think it's the only way to do it. I'm not saying it may not be satisfying, but it's the only way you can move this story forward.
Right. I mean, it's definitely a downer ending. I mean, there's not a lot of positive things like Peter doesn't really save anybody at the end. I mean, I guess he saves people from Sandman, so he does make does something there, but he doesn't like save the city. He lets like Harry run rampant while he's trying to take revenge on his uncle's killer.
It was just a story that was going at a snail's pace. I like Spider-Man 2 the best, but my two criticisms of that movie haven't changed in years since I've seen it, and it's still the best of that set, but I'm just like, one, the climax is just lame. And two, I'm like, yeah, I feel like not a lot really happened. The biggest thing that happens in that movie is really just Harry finding out. That's the biggest. That's the biggest
scene.
That's great. That's the biggest revelation. But for the rest of it, it's like there's a supervillain. He stops the supervillain.
People love Doc Ock, though. People love Alfred Molina.
I know, and he's great. But I don't feel like I feel like in some ways he was a little underutilized. Like in the end, it's just like I'm gonna put together my thing again. Might blow up the city, but whatever.
I will not die a monster.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's so over the top. I mean, but that's what I'm saying. It's like a melodrama with this love triangle thing. So
yeah, but again, it wasn't. I felt like there weren't giant stakes in Spider-Man 2. It was more like I felt like Spider-Man 2 was trying to get its bearings straight again after probably overplaying its card in the first one, where it's like we're gonna do the Gwen Stacy scene and we're gonna do and it's just like, all right, what is this series about? And then
right.
But then once you do that, it's already moving at a snail's pace. And then when you get to part 3, it was just, again, it was the problem I think the first one kind of had. It's like, well, how much shit can we shove in here?
Yeah, I mean,
to try to hit every note. Like
after the second Spider-Man movie came out, I remember a lot of people saying, and there was jokes about this at like the MTV Movie Awards and all this stuff about like, oh, this is like the end of Spider-Man 2. Where do we go from here? Because it's like Mary Jane knows, about Peter and stuff, and like Harry knows about Green Goblin, so it's like, oh, what else is there to do? But there were things to do.
Well, there's some things to do. You wrap up the Goblin plotline for one thing.
That's what I'm saying. Like, Harry should have been the main villain.
Oh no, shit!
Why? I know. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So I mean,
Sandman should be a secondary villain. Harry should be the main villain.
Why Sandman's
Venom shouldn't be in it.
Venom just shouldn't be in it. I mean, like if you just had a full Venom, you could turn it into 2 movies. With like I was saying earlier, with the Black Suit Saga as one movie, and then tease full Venom for the second movie. And if they would have promoted it that way, people would have shown up to see the movie. And Sony, people would have seen the movie. This is what I'm saying. Spider-Man is always going to be a moneymaker. When you add Venom to the mix, that's going to quantify.
Let's count our blessings. We got into the Spider-Verse right now.
Multiply your earnings.
And the Holland series is okay.
This is before we saw Far From Home, so...
I'm
hoping it's okay.
I'm hoping it's okay.
Right.
He's got to have more angst now. So that was my gripe about Homecoming.
Yeah, we didn't get a lot of
despite
Uncle Ben
the great
stuff.
villain. Yeah, I feel like well now we know who Uncle Ben might really be in this series.
I know
after Endgame.
They're pushing that, but I still want to see something about Uncle Ben. Damn it!
I think it's too late. Like at this point, the time to do that would have been in Homecoming. They effed it up. And now they got to own it. So at this point, it's just like, you know what? Go with, spoiler alert, go with Stark.
Right. Well, this is what I've heard. Now, I didn't read any like spoilers or anything. This is just speculation from articles that I've read. But they're saying that, like a good theory that's out there right now, is that Peter got bitten by a spider at a Tony Stark facility or something. And that's how Tony knew who he was, because he was following him from that.
Huh.
So, like, that would be some way to tie it in. But I don't really think you need that for his story to work.
No. I think what needed to happen in Homecoming is they needed to make that connection between Tony and Uncle Ben. There should have been and they were getting close. There were a couple scenes where I'm like, do it. Just say it. Like, this subtext is here. But at some point, Tony would be like, I'm not your father, or maybe he's like overprotective of Peter because
Did you want him to say with great power comes great responsibility?
No, but I did want something.
Great power comes great responsibility.
I did want at some point maybe Tony, at some point is something like, well, somebody's got to be your father. Like the fact that Uncle Ben's not there and he looks at Stark as another father figure.
Yes, yeah.
And so there's this tension between the two of them, but they didn't really go full on with that.
As a fan of the Uncle Ben origin with everything with Peter Parker and Spider-Man, I hope that they do something with him. I know that like people pointed out that the suit that he keeps his case in or something has like Ben's initials on it or something. So maybe we'll get like Aunt May talking about him or something. I don't know. We'll
just
see.
a mention,
right? And there's always rumors out there about trying to get Tom Hardy's Venom into the MCU somehow, or having Venom, or having Tom Holland go into the Venom movie or something like that, because Sony wants to have its cake and eat it too, of course. So they've been talking about that for a long time, so maybe there'll be a tease for that at the end of this? I don't know. We already have a black suit Spider-Man in this movie. He's like not noir Spider-Man, but like stealth Spider-Man or something.
Hey, here's an idea.
Incognito.
How about Sony just pump everything in the Spider-Verse? How
I'm
about we do
down
that?
with that. I'm down with that.
I don't know. Like even the Holland movies, like the new one coming up, I'm gonna watch it, and I'm sure I'll enjoy it. But I'll be sitting there going like, what's going on in the Spider-Verse right now?
Right.
That's what really I'm concerned about.
I got you. Well, getting back on track with Spider-Man 3 before we wrap stuff up, is there anything that stuck out to you in my version of it that you would have absolutely done differently if this was your fanscription? Did you have any ideas from beforehand about what you would do to try and fix things up that I didn't address?
Not particularly. You changed so many things that, as I said, my biggest problem is with too many villains. You fix that. Uber dork Peter sucks. You fix that. If I were to do Spider-Man 3, I wouldn't have had Gwen Stacy at all, but I probably wouldn't have had Mary Jane getting killed off. That I'll give you credit. That was thinking pretty much outside of the box, because when you told me that, I was like, oh. I was like, wow. I didn't even think, I'm too married to the comics where that the thought never crossed my mind.
Right, that's why I was trying to break away from it, because this married version of Mary Jane is not the Mary Jane that we all know anyway, you know?
No. And the sad part is I thought Kirsten Dunst's performance was fine. I thought there was so much potential
her
there.
writing's terrible.
Oh, it's
Especially
awful.
in the second
really
Spider-Man movie, her lines are awful. That
Yeah.
scene when she's talking to her friend about leaving J. Jonah Jameson's son and all that stuff is terrible, man. I don't care if you love that movie. You watch that one scene isolated, it's awful. It is awful.
She's always the weak link in them, and it's not.
It's not her
fine.
fault.
It's a fine performance,
Right.
and she looks the part. I feel like she could act the part even better. That's not on her. I feel like
it's the writing.
They
of
probably
her.
dialed it back, but that was she's supposed to be a Spitfire. So really, though, really throughout all the movies, I know she's got an abusive dad in this, but she just comes off as depressed the whole time.
She
I'm
does.
right,
and that was one of the
she's
changes.
supposed to be in the comics. She's supposed to be much more of this
bright,
flamboyant actress.
charismatic, very funny and interesting,
and
and
they dialed that back to a degree. I felt like they dialed it back too far. It's I don't need her like crazy Lindsay Lohan flying off the rafters, but
no, I'm
just
not talking
something
about that.
You need something other than kind of what they did,
right? But I tried to play into that at least with the father stuff and relating that to Harry's father problems, which they never talked about in the third Spider-Man movie or in the second Spider-Man movie that I remember. That they both have fathers that were bad guys, and one's dead, and they're kind of still controlled by their fathers. MJ mentions earlier in Spider-Man 3, it's oh, my father wrote this bad review. She's still tied to that. Harry obviously is all about his dad and what happened with him, so them connecting on that in that scene, and Harry leaning in for the kiss, I thought was much more important than her trying to cheat on Peter, whatever the heck happened in that scene in the actual movie.
God, I forgot about that.
Right, but that's the turn. That's the catalyst for the turn, is because Harry thinks that there's a real connection happening there, and there is, but not in a romantic way that he's feeling, and he leans in for a kiss, and when MJ shuts him down, he just goes nuts, and that's the point of no return for him.
Something I just thought of while you were talking about this, there's one thing I would add, which is maybe Peter could, would Peter want to admit to Mary Jane, oh yeah, I pretty much killed Harry's dad? Would he want to unload all that?
But he didn't really.
He didn't really, but he probably bears response. He feels like he probably bears response.
Yes.
So if he doesn't tell her that, but he also knows Harry's dangerous, that's another way to ratchet up tension. Stay away from Harry, but he doesn't want to tell her really what happened.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. So that's another thing. Maybe because he didn't tell her,
she puts herself in harm's way without knowing everything about the situation.
Yeah, so that'd be another way to ratchet up the drama a bit.
That could also cause their rift a little bit more, because in my version, it's just that she's jealous and she's just having a really rough time going through being rejected and being fired from the play. And at that time, Spider-Man, in the actual movie, Spider-Man is being praised, he's finally being accepted, and she's very jealous of that, and she's an actress and she needs to be liked.
Okay, if I had one complaint, maybe that would be it. I just, that type of plot line just
That was in the movie. I know.
I know it's in the movie, and
I didn't change it.
No, you didn't change it, and that's the thing. Like when I'm thinking about in the movies, everything you
I do
change,
like
like,
your idea there, though.
I didn't like that. I mean, that's not on you as in the movie as well, but like it just makes her come off as kind of catty. Like
I don't know about catty, but just a little less.
I'm jealous.
A little immature. Than what she was portrayed as earlier.
Perhaps.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense, like I said, because her whole career is about people having to like her so she could get jobs, So it's like, at least it kind of makes sense.
I don't know.
But I do like your idea.
It's not a plot thread that appeals to me personally.
No, me neither. But I was like,
maybe it's because I just came off of watching the Kim Possible live action movie.
What?
And that is literally
speaking of redheads.
No, that is literally like the whole story. Yeah. So maybe it's just fresh on my mind. I was like, I really hate that.
Yeah, I understand. That.
So coming off of that, maybe that's just more on my mind.
Right.
But yeah, I'm just like it just I don't know. That just comes off as like. Yeah, I guess maybe because that movie did it so poorly, I'm just like, this is really just all about a bunch of mean girls. Got it. Like, it's just, I don't know if I want to go that route.
I totally get that. But the riff that we're talking about with your idea of, like, Peter not telling her every single thing about it, and maybe she knows that there's something that he is not telling her, and that kind of builds and builds, and then the thing that happens with...
When you get real tension, that's how you milk the drama.
Right, and then what happens with Flint Marko and discovering that he's the person who killed Uncle Ben, and that just compounds on top of everything, and then they could have some much more heated arguments than the one I had in my version of FanScription. That's a good idea to push it, so...
apart from that, I'm not sure. Just most things you pretty much changed. So
I did the best I could, man.
No, and I think that's the point I'm trying to make, which is like I'm not sure there's a perfect way to solve what was already a bunch of. You know what? It's a snowball effect. It was like there were problems in the first film that were already building to a pretty big snowball, and then the second film it stayed about the same for a long time, but then near the end that snowball got bigger. So now you've got this runaway snowball that you've got to try to like correct, and it's just super difficult. I think he did the best with what was just nuts.
Right. Thanks. Maybe another way to look at it is maybe just having taking Sandman out and having it just be Venom and Harry as the villains, and maybe the Venom symbiote like builds up his aggression and he goes after Harry too much or something, and then he realizes like on the brink of killing him.
So here's the problem, and actually this is a good point because I don't think enough people talk about this. There is a major problem with putting Venom in the same movie as the Goblin. They're the same character. Like the whole idea between Venom and this like dual personality thing, at least with the way these films did it. Mm-hmm. Now you basically have two versions of the same idea. Yeah, and then you've got Peter Parker, who also has issues with duality. So you got this becomes a Batman Returns problem too, where everybody's dealing with duality.
I like Batman Returns.
I like it. No, I love that movie, but like it is like kind of villain heavy, and I'm just thinking like Venom. That's my thing about Venom. Venom has enough ideas in it to be one movie with Peter Parker.
I agree 100%. Like
so
I said earlier,
I would just skip if you want to introduce Brock into it. If you want to,
that's what I did.
Maybe even the alien suit. If you want to introduce the concept, but the whole idea of like Venom even showing up should not happen in Spider-Man 3.
Right.
And Raimi was absolutely right about that.
Well, he didn't like Venom. That's the whole... I think he probably would have made a good Venom movie if he liked the character, but he didn't like Venom. He doesn't
I think one of the reasons he doesn't like Venom is because he already was doing Venom. He's probably looking at this going like, I had Goblin 1, I've got Goblin 2 now. Like, this is Venom already. I decided to do it with the Goblin. Right. And that's always been a thing with a lot of Spider-Man villains, is particularly Harry and Norman Osborn. Like, I don't know. I liked Venom a lot, but I was always more invested in Green Goblin because there was like this kind of human
side. He's more the arch nemesis.
Yeah, and so if you're already doing them, it's like, why bother with Venom? Like, I feel like Raimi's whole idea probably would have been, someone else wants to do Venom, go ahead. Make another Spider-Man movie of your own. Or it's like, I'm on Goblin right now. Right. I don't need to do two of the same thing. This is redundant. And I think he's 100% correct.
Yeah, I mean, and like Spider-Man has a great rogues gallery. I mean, like you could do a lot with the villains of Spider-Man's universe. Or I
loved your idea, by the way, of making him Hobgoblin.
Oh yeah,
depending on the Hobgoblin, he's either human or alien, but in this case, I'm just like
an Osborn. Now it's that's the next progression.
It's perfectly fine being an Osborn because we get a new outfit. I'm thinking like man, if you made a really scary-ass Hobgoblin outfit,
Yeah.
like make him look like the freaking Grim Reaper floating through the sky, like, you know, tattered, like, robe floating.
That
Like,
could be
I'm like,
cool, yeah.
I'm like, that would be badass.
Yeah. And this one I tried to, and thanks to Anna V for doing the concept art for this episode, I tried to combine the one that we know, like from the comics, the Hobgoblin comics, or from the Spider-Man comics, with the armor kind of that we saw in the first Spider-Man movie. I thought we came up with a pretty good design. I like it.
Well, as a kid, I loved Hobgoblin.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I always realized, like, well, this is just a variation on the
It
Goblin
is.
idea, so why not just, you know, own it?
I think that's why they brought him in the first place, was because, like, they couldn't bring Green Goblin back because he was dead, or there's another reason for him not to come back. So, like, we still need a Goblin, and they just came up with Hobgoblin as a completely unrelated character. But it's still a Goblin.
I always liked the character design. I liked Hobgoblin. Like, those are my favorite villains.
Yeah.
So, no, I thought that was a great idea.
Thanks. Yeah. So, I mean, having Hobgoblin in there as the next phase of Green Goblin
And it's
instead of being
scarier,
the new Goblin.
too.
Right. And it's more terrifying with
It's
the
like
mask
we're
and all
upping the
that.
ante.
Right. And you could still keep the tech stuff based into it. I mean, like, I was going to have his mask come off like this, like it did in Spider-Man 3. So there's still tech stuff on it. Like, he's got armor still. He still have all his weapons. I kept the snowboard because I think that's a different design. He could do some, like, more stealthy things with it, maybe. It'd be easier to maneuver around. So I think that would have been great to see on screen, especially when it comes off in James Franco's crazy smile. I think that would have done pretty well.
I just love James Franco.
I love him too,
and that's
Even
the thing.
in Spider-Man 3, I love him.
Hated that amnesia subplot.
I know.
However, his
he's
performance
great.
just makes me laugh every
he
time.
knows it's bad. That's
Right,
what's
Peter?
great. 'Cause
Oh, he knows
James
it's
Franco
garbage.
knows it's bad, and he
Yeah.
leans so hard into every line he
And
says.
listen,
I love
if
it.
that's your if that's your point, like that's kind of Malcolm's point, whatever we talk about, it's like,
I
yeah,
love
it's
him.
garbage
I
and it's
just like
hilarious.
James
I'm
Franco.
fine with that. So long as you're saying it's garbage, that's fine.
Right.
It's people who try to seriously defend. No, it's a legit good movie. I'm like, no, it's
man.
not.
I'm sorry if you think that. I mean, I'm not gonna say you're wrong, but I don't see that point of view at all.
I will do it for you. I will take in all the hate and just, yeah, you're wrong. So there. You don't have to send the hate mail to him. You can send it to me.
There you go.
You're welcome.
Care of Rob Walker.
Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go into hiding for a few moments.
I think that's just about all we have to say about this. This was a good discussion. I think I had to get a lot of this out. It's been building up for 12 years now.
Catharsis.
Yeah, to just talk a long-form discussion about this. And I hope you guys are having a civil conversations in the comments as well. I know that's a lot to ask around here, but still, it's good to debate things and good to talk about different points of view. So it's fun to go over something like this and hear different people's thoughts.
Well,
on
nothing's
it.
more... Maybe the X-Men series, but nothing's more fascinating to me than the long, sad history of these Spider-Man movies and how close they come to greatness and then keep crashing and burning again.
Right.
And
well, let's hope that the ante keeps getting upped here.
I hope so. Like this
Far
is the
From Home.
best time to be a Spider-Man fan.
Absolutely.
Right now.
Absolutely,
so hopefully they keep it going.
You're right. I haven't been watching the cartoon that they have. I think it's just called Marvel Spider-Man. I haven't heard too many great things.
I haven't
about
seen it.
I know a lot of people liked Ultimate Spider-Man. Spectacular Spider-Man I covered on top 5, which is a really good. I think you'd like that one. The animation character models are a little. Not great.
I just remember the one from the '90s. I never was able to watch
That's my favorite one
any of the
still.
other ones.
That's still my favorite one.
I thought it was pretty good.
Shocker! I'll chase you to the ends of the earth. Why didn't we get that in this movie? Then I would have been just cheering in the audience. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. Rob, you're gonna be back next month, right? With the new.
I will.
You got an idea yet?
No, I don't. I've got a few ideas, but I do want to take a look at the end of the Haunting miniseries, which was 9 fantastic episodes, completely destroyed in the last one.
I know a lot of people. That's a more recent thing, so people might be interested in that. Sure.
I don't know when Endgame is coming out on
They just
Blu-ray.
bring it back in theaters so it could break Avatar's record.
Man. Because I do want to tackle that one because I was not a fan of things that went down with Black Widow in that one. So
no, yeah, I gotcha. Yeah, that
I don't know. We'll
cover.
see. Maybe it will be none of those. I don't know.
Okay, all right.
But I feel like you're gonna want footage for that one, so I kind of want to wait till that one comes out on Blu-ray. But
sure. Well, I mean, they have that. Everyone has been using like the cam footage that they got from before.
Well, maybe we can work
maybe
around
we can
that.
just use that.
I mean, we're definitely going to have it here in the studio when it's out, so.
Absolutely. Well, in any case, you'll be back. It's been a few months since you've done a FanScription. I think, was Ghostbusters 2 your last one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
All right, so it'll be good to have you back behind the typewriter, figuratively and I guess kind of literally.
The keyboard.
Yes. So we'll get a Rob episode next month, and we'll be back here to talk about it on the FanScription podcast. So, by the way, if you're listening to this, make sure you subscribe to our iTunes feed or wherever you get podcasts. Make sure you subscribe to the feed to get these once a month. And thank you guys for watching here on YouTube. We'll be back next month with new episodes of FanScription and the podcast. So, I'm Walter Bernasiak.
I'm Rob.
And we'll talk to you guys next time.
And remember, with greatness comes the ability to do the right thing and I don't know.
But, a lot of people didn't know who I was anyway, so it's okay.
And high school, a couple days, like a couple years. Wow.
Well, fine.